Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, we've been hearing and reading and watching on TV all about this, what's sort of been pushed out there as a crime trends happening and the safety or lack thereof in New York City. And we're going to take a little bit of a look at that tonight. You know, going back, we must also realize, which many people forget about this, but New York City's NYPD was defunded by $1 billion. People don't realize that. And they never totally reimbursed the city. It never got back to the level that it was before all these defund the police movement people came in. So the NYPD, I believe, is short, 4,000, 5,000 police officers, plus recruitment and retention is a very difficult subject in New York City, and police departments for that matter across the nation. Very sad, because the noblest of professions has been so hurt by politics that to say that they're hampered, that they're almost fighting crime with one hand tied behind their back it's pretty true, you know, and the hits keep coming, you know, and we're going to go over some of those hits that have been occurring. And yet the NYPD, there's an expression on the NYPD for the Honor Legion, fidelis ad mortem, which is Latin for faithful until death. And the best of the NYPD really feel that way, you know, and that's the motto of the NYPD Honor Legion, which less than 10% of the job are members of, because you have to be awarded a department recognition in the level of commendation or higher to be accepted to the Honor Legion. But cops don't take the job for money. They take the job out of a sense of service and out of a sense of trying to do good and trying to help members of their community. Yet, it seems that they're the target of the worst type of politics. And we saw, I'm going to put on the screen, the cops getting attacked in Times Square by a group of migrants. And then we saw the response to that. But, you know, they're getting attacked by all levels, being kicked from the back. At least 6 or 7 of these men attack them. And if you follow the New York City and the district attorneys in New York City, they all have this decarceral policy. And what does that mean? They don't want to put anyone in jail. They don't want to put anyone in prison. So they're more on the side of the criminal than they are on the crime victim, which I find, as a 27-year veteran of the NYPD, I find a little bit disturbing, you know. And when you know the level of crimes that they're plea bargaining to lower crimes, for example, robbery first degree, very scary crime. If you've ever been a victim of a robbery, someone could pull a knife or gun at you. And if they do so, and they take your wallet and they leave and they don't hurt you, guess what the district attorney in Manhattan is going to do with that case? He's going to plea bargain it down to a misdemeanor, a petty larceny. Could you imagine having a gun stuck in your face and someone telling you, give me your wallet or I'm going to kill you or shoot you? And then they take your wallet. Now you're supposed to feel good. Oh, he didn't hurt me, you know? And that crime, by these geniuses that sit in these district attorney positions, is being plea bargained down to a misdemeanor, a petty larceny. Petty larceny. Disgusting, you know. So these are some of the things we want to speak about tonight. If I'm getting all riled up, you can understand why. I spent 6.5 years in anti-crime out of my 27-year police career. And then I was in robbery investigations as a sergeant and ran 2 different robbery units, the 2-4 precinct on the west side. Then I went to the 2-3 precinct on the east side, Spanish Harlem, El Barrio. So I know all about robbery. And robbery is about as close as you can get to almost killing someone without doing so. And yet the district attorney, he wants to take a holistic approach. He likes to use that word. Anyway, folks, hold on to your seats. This is going to be a really interesting show tonight. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, true crime from a police perspective. You're entering the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
You know, handling such a combustible topic as I am tonight, I figured I have to have someone to calm me down. So who do I have but the man of reason, retired NYPD sergeant, professor of criminal justice at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney, some say potentially hears confessions, fatherly. Welcome to the show, Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good evening. Good to see you. Welcome, everyone.
You know, Mike, this is this whole situation, especially when you watch the video of New York City cops getting attacked and kicked, and when you also realize how hampered they are by the law. There's a law that I don't know if many civilians know about. It's called the diaphragm law, and when a police officer arrests someone, if he puts his knee in their back to get them handcuffed, he or she could be charged with a misdemeanor for preventing air flowing into their diaphragm. It's the most ridiculous law. And this is the kind of people we have in our government in New York City. Anyway, so cops are afraid. They're afraid to do it. That's how we were trained. Put your knee in the guy's back, rip his hand behind his back, get the first cuff on, and then you can apply some pain with the handcuff. So they surrender the next hand and you get them cuffed. To hamper them like that, and there's multiple perps, and these two cops, and I just want to show a little bit of this. These cops are getting the shit beat out of them.
Two of the asylum seekers arrested for attacking New York City police officers recently are members of a notorious Venezuelan gang, and that one of them should not have been in the United States because a Texas judge had previously ordered him deported. 5 of the 8 now in custody for the attack were in court today to hear the charges against them, and Fox's Linda Schmidt has our story.
Wilson Juarez and Kelvin Servita Arocha in court today in Lower Manhattan are members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, according to ICE. The two are part of the migrant mob accused of beating and kicking 2 NYPD officers in Times Square last month. ICE telling me today that Juarez should not have even been in the U.S. A judge in El Paso, Texas, ordered him deported a year ago. Now they, along with 5 others in this case, are behind bars at Rikers. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg asking the judge for bail since the suspects have been indicted.
Our criminal justice system did its job. These individuals are all behind bars where they belong.
After their initial arrest, Juarez and Arocha were released without bail by DA Bragg, along with Yorman Reveron and Darwin Gomez Isquiel. Isquiel was arrested again this week and charged with shoplifting at a Macy's in Queens.
They should have never been released. The DA in the case should have requested bail. The judge should have kept them behind bars.
Yohenry Brito was the only suspect who was sent to Rikers on $15,000 bail after the beating in January. A source telling me that he was released this week after an activist pastor from a Brooklyn church posted his bail. However, he is now back in Rikers while authorities investigate the source of that money. Police body cam video shows the interaction with the officers and the migrants on January 27th. Officers had instructed the group not to block the sidewalk and to move along. Some of the suspects' lawyers raising questions as to whether police overreacted.
I think it's undisputed that physical contact in this case was initiated by a police officer.
The bottom line is that this individual didn't comply with a New York City police officer.
You know, Mike,
Yeah.
that drives me crazy. And, you know, the New York Times, great newspaper of leftists, right? They suggested that the cops started this. It's their job to enforce the law. The Times, the friendly paper, the Times, it's so left, it's beyond left. And they suggested that the police started this by telling them to move. Your thoughts?
Bill, it's a case of you can't win either way. If you are a proactive police officer in this sort of tinderbox that Manhattan is, with all the migrants and all the politicians and the special interest groups trying to tie your hands, you can't win either way. If you ignore the problem and you drive by, you know, and you just keep on moving, people will say that you don't care, that you don't care about the public safety for the citizens. It's ideology over common sense, and that is affecting, excuse me, that's affecting the safety of every single man, woman, and child, and store owner and shopkeeper in the city. And it's really sad, but this is what police are having to face every day. No wonder morale is very low and productivity is low, because you can't win either way.
You know, Mike, to me, this is so disgraceful. And that at least a couple of these guys, one of them, in fact, well, and maybe more, was on a deport. A judge had already deported him in Texas.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But because the police are not allowed to check with ICE on the immigration status, they're not allowed to. This is what we're dealing with. And for you folks, the acronym ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. If the NYPD is holding someone, you know, that's some notorious bad guy, they're not allowed to contact ICE. It's just absolutely outrageous. Like, who's behind this? I would love to know that.
I remember back in the mid 80s, we used to, whenever we made an arrest in the Bronx, when I was in the 4-6, we used to always call Immigration Naturalization Service with the name and date of birth, that we could authenticate it for our perpetrator, and to see if Immigration Naturalization Service wants to come and pick them up, if they're illegal or not. That was just something that you would do, because being in the United States illegally is actually a criminal offense. So therefore, we're working with our federal agencies to help keep the streets safe. The fact that this is not done anymore, again, it affects every single American. It doesn't matter if you where you live in the city. You could be a wealthy person, you could be a poor person, middle class, but you got to run into these people, and they can rob you. You could be on the street, you could be on a bus, you could be walking down on a subway. But this really raises the level of criminality in the city, and everyone suffers as a result.
You know, Mike, I want to read a little bit of the New York Times article. And I'm going to read the names of the people that wrote it, because I think they should be put out there. It's written by Maria Kramer, Maria Sanchez Diaz, and Melissa Kravitz Hoffner. In the past month, this is dated February 15th. This is from the New York Times. In the past month, the New York Police Department has described alarming crimes involving young men living in the city's migrant shelters. A 15-year-old boy, the police said, shot at an officer in Times Square and hit a tourist. 2 officers were kicked and punched on West 42nd Street. A Venezuelan oversaw a ring of criminals who rode mopeds and snatched purses and cell phones from more than 60 people, most of them women walking alone. During an early morning police raid last week in the Bronx, Mayor Eric Adams, dressed in a bulletproof vest over a Fendi scarf, joined officers as they arrested 5 people accused of perpetrating the robbery spree. A migrant crime wave is washing over our city, Police Commissioner Edward Caban told reporters hours later. This is the best line I love. Some of the crimes were captured on videos that have since gone viral, leading Republican politicians and their allies to say that migrant criminals are besieging New York. Isn't everyone concerned about this crime? Why is it just Republicans? That bias that the New York Times puts out there is sickening, But I needed to point to it because, this doesn't bother all New Yorkers. This doesn't. Are people okay that people are coming into this country illegally, i.e., sanctuary city? Sanctuary city is illegal. It's against federal law. So they're coming in, and then bad enough that the taxpayers have to pay to put them up at these hotels, but now they're committing crimes and they're not being punished for it.
Bill, crime affects everyone, regardless of your age, gender, race, socioeconomic status, location in the city. There is no place that's really safe. It's like, welcome back, as I tell my children, welcome back to the 1970s. And because that's what the city is looking like. Squeegee people around, all of the things, the quality of life, alarms that you see all around, signs of distress, in our streets, in our subway system. No one's safe. It's not, crime is not a Republican or Democratic thing. It's a New York citizen thing, and everyone feels it equally. So it's sad that you've got that sort of political delineation that's really not a service to anybody, and it doesn't move the conversation that needs to take place. It doesn't move it in a good direction. Not at all.
Absolutely. This is from the same article, Mike, and then I'll get off the New York Times, but it's just, to me, it's a little bizarre. Quantifying crimes committed by migrants is nearly impossible because the police are not allowed to ask about a suspect's immigration status, said Kenneth Curry, a former chief of department who retired in 2022. But police data indicate that there has been no surge in crime since April 2022, when Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, again, another hit at a Republican politician of Texas, started sending buses of migrants to New York to protest the federal government's border policy. So they're saying that first of all, they're not allowed to ask someone's immigration status, but the Times is saying, but there's no noticeable uptick in migrant crimes. How do you know? They're not allowed to ask.
Right. If you don't keep statistics, then you're not going to know what the actual numbers are. And sometimes it may be more convenient for people with an agenda to not want to have statistics out there. Everyone can see in Midtown Manhattan, any place you go, in places in Brooklyn and Staten Island, they've even had children leave school and had to be taught from home, on the internet, because they've taken over school buildings. We see this in Chicago. We see this in many cities, even Denver, Colorado. There's no place that is immune from this thing, and it's causing a crisis for the people who live in cities, because if you're a middle-class person and you can't afford to just flee the city, you work there, you live there, you raise your children there, you're born there, and this is where you make your home, and it's affecting everyone equally. And to sit there and start to parse according to a person's political leanings or the political party, it's a disservice to the public. That's really what it is.
The person you're seeing up on the screen, he was one of the individuals that assaulted the cops in Times Square, and he was deported by a judge in another state, and yet he came back into this country, and he's committing crimes. And when you see up on the screen here, this was a citywide grand larceny pattern, as you see, number 156. A whole gang called Tren de Aragua, and they're from Venezuela. And the fear in our country is that some of these Hispanic Latin gangs will join forces with each other. Right. MS-13.
Oh, yes.
The Latin Kings. This new Tren de Aragua, and then some of the other ones from Honduras. And you know, what's been reported is that I think most of the people crossing our border are males between the ages of 18 and 40. 60% is that demographic. Yet
Yeah.
they're not being vetted. You know, we both were 9/11 first responders.
Mhm.
And did our country not learn anything from that incident? That you at least have to have secure borders and check people coming across the border, because now people are coming from all over the world, all different countries. It's not even just South America, Mexico.
Asia
It's
now.
not. They're coming from China. They're coming from the Middle East, and they're not being vetted. So you could be having, you know, Al Qaeda coming into our country. No one would know. No one would know at all.
It would be different if you saw mothers and fathers with children. You know, your heart would go out to them. And I think people would feel a lot better extending a courtesy to people and understanding and, you know, the benefits of having a wonderful country that we have, and maybe put them in an area where we can actually vet them and figure out who they are, if what they're saying that they're running from is actually true, you know, some sort of political terrorism or war or civil war or something. But when you see that, you know, almost all the people coming across are male and they're late teens, mid 20s, you know, you have to be very concerned, because that is those are your potential people who may hook up with other gangs, like you say, and they can have you know, a countrywide joining of forces with other pre-existing, you know, cartels, you know, organized crime gangs across in major cities across the country. And that's no joke. That's going to cause a lot of crime, a lot of violence, and a lot of people are going to suffer because of it.
Here's a report on the Venezuelan gangs.
4 of the migrants accused of beating a pair of NYPD officers in Times Square are due in court today. Federal immigration officials say 2 of those suspects are linked to a violent Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua. The New York Post reports the gang is involved in robberies, drug dealing, and human trafficking across South America, and now are contributing to the wave of assaults against New York City police officers that's being called a full-blown epidemic. The NYPD is still crunching the numbers, but it projects that for 2023, there will be more than 5,400 cops injured in attacks. You can see that number consistently rising steadily the past few years. Paul Morrow, your thoughts?
So look, all 5,400 are not going to go to this prison gang. But the bottom line is that we've imported people that Maduro wanted out of his prisons and out of his country. He's not taking them back. So we have a whole new headache. And let me just make this point real quick. They're in the wrong court, because we're not going to get any satisfaction out of Alvin Bragg. We need federal RICOs of the kind that took down the mafia in this country. Lock these guys up. There's a hierarchical structure, big federal cases. Where are the feds? They're absentee.
Well, Rosanna sat down with Mayor Eric Adams to discuss the migrant crisis that he says will, quote, destroy New York. The Sanctuary Trap is now available on Fox Nation. Here's a quick preview on just how out of control the situation has gotten here in New York City. Watch.
The Roosevelt is just a few blocks from the Port Authority bus terminal. Every day, new migrants arrive in Midtown Manhattan by the busload. They all claim asylum, and they all come through this processing center. Further downtown, the mayor is running out of options.
I did get a chance before I sat down with you to go to Roosevelt Hotel. And boy, oh boy, was that an eye-opener. Can you ever see yourself shutting down Roosevelt Hotel and saying, we can't process anymore?
Not in the near future. As long as the laws stay the way they are, where people are allowed to come to the city, and there's nothing I can do, I must have an intake center.
You know, I'm just, you know, I'm amazed that, you know, then why can't you change the law? And I mean, is this a state legislature thing? This law would have to, or is it a city council thing? Well, you can understand the city council's a bunch of boobs, and you know. But if this is a state legislature thing, why can't it be changed?
It could be. It could be. You could legislate anything, and you have a monopoly of one political party in New York. They could change it, but they don't want to. And the idea, I guess, perhaps many years ago, 30, 40, maybe 40 years ago, when New York City became a sanctuary state, New York State became a sanctuary state, and New York City became a sanctuary city, they probably believed that had no idea this sort of thing would happen, and they were probably counting on maybe housing, maybe a couple of hundred people, and that would be about it. And so therefore they got to be able to say, look, we are a sanctuary city. We can take, we could take 100 people, no problem. But what happened is their promise was now taken up, and now they're unfortunately suffering the consequences, because there's the intended consequences of your actions, and there's the unintended consequences of the actions. And the unintended consequences here are that their promise now has to be fulfilled, and that's not an easy thing to do when you don't have any money coming from the state to help you, and you have, as a mayor of New York, have to work this all out on your own. Perhaps they never really thought that it would get any more than 100 people in that, but 5,000, 10,000 people later, 20,000 people later, I think it's well over 20,000 now. It's probably 25,000. They honestly just don't know what to do.
Mike, when you think about this crisis here in New York and other states also, again, it's not a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican, but our government is to blame for this.
Mm-hmm.
Both parties, because both parties have done nothing, and they're more concerned about paying for wars than they are taking care of this country, and it's sort of disgusting that that's their main concern, is paying for wars overseas. Meanwhile, our own border, and how about the poor people that live in this country? The resources that are meant to pay perhaps for them, their housing, their food, or whatever, is being given to people that aren't citizens here. And I think that there's going to be a lot of pushback. And there was already a big pushback in Harlem. They tried to move in a whole group of people into this luxury housing, and then the community went crazy. And I think the city backed off from doing it.
Yeah, there's a replacement going on. People don't realize it, is that all the goods and services that cities like Chicago have, Denver have, LA, San Francisco, Florida, Miami, Texas, all those cities down there, all of the services that were put into effect many years ago, funded and set up for poor and disabled and mentally handicapped American citizens, to get them services, to get them back on their feet, homeless services, alcohol, anti-alcohol and narcotic services. That's all been taken from them, and all of those things are now being given to a whole different group of people, and the American citizens are pushed aside. So the Americans are actually just getting pushed out. The beneficiaries for all of those services that taxpayers pay for is being substituted by a whole new population that hasn't paid $1 in taxes and it isn't actually supposed to be legally here to get those services. It's a strange place we live in, and I couldn't imagine this ever happening 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Could never imagine happening, but it's happening, and we're stuck with it for a long time to come. It's not like we can, with one election cycle, this is going to end. No, this is going to be a generational problem to solve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arrest followed 4 migrants also arrested and charged in the assault Saturday, and one later Monday. Yet all were released but one, who was under a supervised release. The calls for justice in the attack just keep coming in, including this one by the PBA president just outside of the courtroom Wednesday morning.
They brutally attacked a New York City police officer and a lieutenant. Our criminal justice system is upside down. It fails every day.
Governor Hochul behind the podium hinted deportation should be looked at for the migrants involved in the attack before saying it plainly and clearly.
Get them all and send them back. We don't touch our police officers. We don't touch anybody.
Republican Staten Island Congressman Nicole Malliotakis blaming politics.
Democratic policies at City Hall have made this much more difficult for our law enforcement than it needs to be.
But the road to capturing and convicting all of the attackers involved is getting rocky, as some have reportedly already fled the city.
And the problem that ICE has is that because the NYPD is prohibited from sharing information, and the city is denying any detainer request, it makes it very difficult.
While officials in Mayor Adams' administrations argue joint local and federal pursuit of the accused shouldn't be that tall of a hurdle.
If the federal authorities are able to get a warrant for the arrest of these individuals, we are allowed to work with them and participate with that.
Meantime, Assistant Commissioner Cass Daughtry posted this video to X with a warning to the suspects.
We will scour the globe to find you if you commit any type of assault on one of our police officers.
I don't know. I'm not afraid. That guy didn't scare me. It's like they make a tough video like that, and meanwhile the cops aren't allowed to put their knee in the back to cuff somebody. And
Right.
let's segue a little bit to some of the recent restrictions, and we talked in the last 2 or 3 years that have made the job of New York City police officer that much more difficult. And one of the top ones is bail reform.
Right.
And instead of people going through we used to call it going through the system, and getting arrested maybe on a Friday night and staying in jail in Manhattan, it was the Tombs, till Sunday night or Monday morning was a real deterrent. And the people arrested knew this.
Sure.
Oh, I'm arrested on a Friday. I ain't getting out till Sunday night, Monday morning. And
yeah,
perhaps it did become a deterrent at some level. It certainly did during the Comstat era. But now, almost no matter what you do, you're getting bailed. And so people are not going to jail for the night or for anything. They're going home. They don't get to taste the great culinary gifts of Tombs cheese sandwiches, And
we gave them bologna in the Bronx. We gave them a slice of bologna.
Bronx, you have bologna. In Manhattan, you get a cheese sandwich, And it was a bit of a deterrent. Now there is no deterrence, Mike.
I remember locking guys up in the 3-0 as a sergeant in the 4-6 in the Bronx. All they wanted to know, like on a Thursday, Friday night, will I make night court? Will I make night court? They wanted desperately to make night court. And, I'd be like, it's like 3:00 in the afternoon. We're locking someone up. I don't know if you're going to make night court by the time, you get online there. I don't know about that. But, other than outright murder, forcible rape, like a kidnapping, other than that, it doesn't really look like anybody is going to be eligible to stay as a guest of the city of New York with a cup of coffee and a bologna sandwich in the Bronx. And you won't be able to receive our hospitality. Everybody is getting out. They're getting out within like 2 hours of arrest. And it's like, I remember, processing desk appearance tickets, and you could do it like not even in 45 minutes, maybe, depending on the crime, what you had a voucher and things like that. But you can arrest someone at 1:00 in the afternoon for, a serious assault, and they're out before the victim is actually treated in the local hospital and get stitches. And that, unfortunately, helps to keep people scared and terrorized, because when they go home, they know that the perp is actually still out on the street. They haven't been kept. They're not even going to be kept for a night or for a weekend in jail. And that really increases the level of terror that people feel in New York City, knowing that almost nothing that can happen to them will actually result in someone being put in jail for a short period of time. Nothing.
Absolutely. From the chat, Jeff M. Allegheny County closed the city of Pittsburgh juvenile detention facility, Schumann Center, 2 years ago. Our crime is through the roof around the city. Jeff, it's happening in all these George Soros elected DAs that he paid $1 million. It's amazing to me how, they talk about, with election reform and how much a private citizen is allowed to give. But they always find ways around it. And George Soros gave $1 million to Bragg's election campaign, the Manhattan district attorney. That should be illegal. It should be illegal to do that. And for a regular citizen, I think you're not allowed to give over 25. I don't know the exact number, but it's pretty low. And how does he get away with giving $1 million? Because he probably gives it to concerned citizens for some nonprofit that funnels it right to the district attorney. It's disgusting. Well, Cat 747, how is this legal? You're right. But during the last election, Mark Zuckerberg gave $400 million to two nonprofits to get the vote out. Who do you think he was getting the vote out for? So there's ways around this stuff that is really, I think, subverting democracy. Because why are private entities like that allowed to give that amount of money? And there's an roundabout way. Then you can't give it directly to a candidate, but it's getting to that candidate through nonprofit.
Billy, we know how to control crime. Everyone knows how to do it. We've done it in the past with aggressive policing, CompStat, targeting hotspots where you get the most calls for service and the most disorder, the most crime in the area, and those calls for service. We know how to do this, and even district attorneys, no matter what they think, if they actually believe that they're actually being progressive, they know what needs to be done. Unfortunately, they can't bring themselves to do it, and so we regress. We're not progressing; we're actually regressing. And as I say, we're regressing back to the 1970s. I would imagine that all the effort that was done from the 80s all the way through till 20, take from 82 to 2002, 20 years, all that work, all that sacrifice, all that crime reduction, it's disappearing, and the level of fear has gone way up. But everyone knows what needs to be done, but it's not going to happen for quite a long period of time. My heart goes out to people who are living in New York City because they have to live with this every single day. You cannot get away from it, no matter where you are in New York City. It's right. The trouble is right around the corner from where you live, if it's not already on your front step. And so, yeah, you close a juvenile facility, you do something like that. That's wonderful ideologically, but what will you do? Because these kids that you are releasing, unless you house them, unless you incarcerate them, they are free to prey upon the citizens of a city, of a state, of a county. It doesn't make any sense. We know what to do. There's just a lack of will in parts of our body politic, and that is hurting everyone.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, and share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with count of 5 different levels, and we appreciate all our Patreon members and our YouTube channel members that help to keep this show going day to day and keep it running and keep the high quality guests we put on here. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, of course, every time, first of all, probably one of the toughest times in law enforcement was, the whole defund the police movement after the George Floyd murder. And that was one of the hardest, and not just in New York City, but nationally, and perhaps even internationally. Police got a bad rap. And in New York City, which is probably the #1 police department in the world, people follow suit a lot of times. What is the NYPD doing? Well, my question is, what are the politicians doing to the NYPD? That diaphragm law is the most horrific law. And I thought it would be reversed. And for a short period of time, it was. And basically, for you non-police, what it is when a cop has to cuff someone, if it gets physical and he has to take that person to the ground, we were trained and police were trained for hundreds of years to put their knee and their body weight in the back of the perpetrator until you got he or she handcuffed. And then you take the pressure off and get them up on their feet. But the city council passed a law called the diaphragm law that makes it a misdemeanor for a police officer to effect an arrest in that way. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's ideology over common sense. Just think about all the people that you put handcuffs on over the course of your time in the NYPD, and I do too. How many of those people gladly followed every single thing that you told them to do? Put your hands behind your back, put your your wrists together, let me handcuff you, and didn't actually offer any sort of resistance. You could probably count them on one hand and have a couple of fingers left over. The people who pass this sort of law, they probably have never done ride-alongs with police, with an anti-crime unit or a uniformed unit, and actually maybe witnessed police officers making the arrests and dealing with violent criminals who've hurt someone in the past. Look at the men who were outside in front of that store, in front of that place where they were jumped on by that whole group. All they had to do was comply with a lawful order of a police officer, and they didn't do it. And look what
And
happened.
Mike, the sickening thing is the New York Times said the police started it. That was almost like their language. Oh,
Right,
the police.
right.
They
That's what you're
initiated. Yes, they're the police.
Right.
They're
That's what
allowed
you're
to give
working with.
lawful orders, and if you disobey them, they can use force.
Right.
But don't you understand, New York Times? It really is just infuriating that these people put out this hogwash as like fact, and meanwhile they're twisting everything to fit their politics.
Yeah. It's a fantasy land where they believe that everyone is actually going to be civil, and when the police come, there's no need for force to be used. There's no need for the police to to do anything other than command someone, and that the people will actually obey. Come along on a ride along. Many departments have done these things. They've gone through the funhouse, the shoot, don't shoot scenario. But you know what? Unfortunately, even if they have, perhaps they don't want to internalize it, think about it, believe it, actually say, well, this is a more complicated issue than a campaign slogan, defund the cops, reimagine policing. How has that really worked out the last 2 or 3 years? Tell me, how has that really worked out, that concept of we're going to reimagine policing? You need...
Mike, let me just interrupt you for 1 second. And what everyone always points to is statistics and numbers and proof. But you know something? 60% of felonies are derated by Alvin Bragg and the Manhattan DA's office. 60%. So in that environment, how can you say that crime's up or down? You're not prosecuting anybody. And how about the NYPD?
Right.
Are they downgrading crimes because they know the DA's office isn't going to prosecute it? So some up-and-coming precinct CO, I don't have to take a robbery. I can make this a grand larceny, or I can make it a pendant larceny, and it makes me look better. So I don't trust the statistics. And I just want to show something so that the audience understands. This was the first day Alvin Bragg took office. The following policies and procedures are effective immediately. The office will not prosecute the following charges unless as part of an accusatory instrument containing at least one felony count. Marijuana misdemeanors. We all know you walk through Manhattan now. If you don't smoke weed, you did smoke weed just walking down the streets because there's clouds of weed all over the place. This is a big one. The act of refusing to pay the fare for public transportation under theft of services. They don't prosecute it. It's a civil matter. That was a huge way that transit police got guns from criminals. was search incidental to lawful arrest. Someone jumps the turnstile, they grab him, handcuff him, guy's got a gun on him. They just, perfect stop, beautiful stop that you got that gun. Trespass, aggravated unlicensed. Resisting arrest. So if a guy fights with a cop, they don't prosecute that.
Right.
To me, that's unbelievable. They don't prosecute it. And then some other crimes like prostitution. Some of them probably were a good idea. Some of them, but most of them were not. And then the ones that really killed me, and this is on the following offenses shall be charged as follows. An act that could be charged under Penal Law 160-15, 2, 3, or 4. This is robbery 1, 2, and 3. That occurs in a commercial setting could be charged under Penal Law 155-25, which is petty larceny if the force or threat of force consists of displaying a dangerous instrument or similar behavior but does not create a genuine risk of physical harm. So if someone sticks a gun in your face and robs you and doesn't shoot you or pulls a knife and doesn't stab you, but takes your wallet, this District Attorney Bragg reserves the right to charge that as a petty larceny. I find that so horrific that he should have been fired the day he put this out.
Bill, when you think about it, it actually doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. If someone pulls a knife or a firearm, even if it's a fake firearm that shoots blanks, they are introducing a gun or a knife, an aggravating factor into an already tense and dangerous situation, which is what every single robbery is, fraught with the possibility of injury or death. So therefore, just the mere possession of that weapon or that fake weapon, even just even having it, does absolutely in and of itself create a great risk of harm. Because what would happen if someone does that to you and you're a licensed pistol you have a concealed carry permit, or you have pepper spray, or you have a knife, and you would actually be allowed to use that in self-defense. So that person has introduced a deadly weapon. They've already raised the level of danger to the maximum level it can possibly be, and yet here we are. We're going to say it's a petty larceny, and because there's no harm done. No harm done. Okay, really? What planet are you on? What planet are we talking about?
Yeah, Mike, it has absolutely no concern for the victims of a robbery. No concern whatsoever. They're more concerned, and Bragg uses the term holistic in this report. This is like a 9 or 10 page. You know what's holistic? You, Alvin Bragg, you should be removed. You should be holistically removed. It's like ridiculous. I just want to read the last thing. This is on page 6. Pretrial detention. There's a presumption of pretrial non-incarceration for every case except those with charges of homicide or the death of a victim, a Class B violent felony in which a deadly weapon or dangerous instrument causes serious physical injury, sex offenses in Article 130 of the Penal Law, domestic violence felonies or charges of Penal Law 215-50, public corruption, rackets, or major economic crimes, including any attempt to commit any such. Anyway.
Yeah.
You don't go to jail. That's, in essence, that's legalese, but you're not going to jail unless you do some of those crimes we just listed.
Right.
So, I mean, he uses the term decarceral, decarceral.
Okay.
Then where is there teeth in the law? Where is there any teeth? And the other thing I was shocked that I just read this again was the Manhattan DA's office, the longest sentence they will go for is 20 years.
That's right.
They won't go for any life sentences anymore. So 20 years, that's the longest sentence they'll go for. It's like, but Mike, there's a criminal procedure law put out by the state. How does he circumvent that? And how does he do that? The state puts out those laws. There's legislators, the state legislature. How did he override that and write up this little 9-page manifesto?
It's probably done with the tacit cooperation of those the state attorney general or the governor. And just to go back to that pretrial detention part that you read, just think about it. There's no presumption of pretrial. There is a presumption of pretrial non-incarceration for like homicides, sex offenses. But along with sex offenses and homicides, we have economic crimes and public corruption. Are you kidding me? So you're going to equate public corruption and economic crime with homicide and sex offenses as the only crimes where you would where you would not have a presumption of non-incarceration? It doesn't make any logical sense, but it's done, as you know, with approval on high.
Right, a tacit approval right up to the top. In fact, I wanted to read this. This is on page 9. If anyone wants to pull this up, it's the Manhattan DA's basically his day one letter policies. For an indeterminate sentence with a maximum of life, the office will request no more than a minimum of 20 years unless required by law. The office shall not seek a sentence of life without parole. It's like, in exceptionally serious cases such as homicides where lengthy periods of incarceration are justified, ADA shall consider the use of restorative justice as a mitigating factor in determining the length of the sentence only when victims or their loved ones consent. Would you explain to the audience what restorative justice is, Mike?
Restorative justice is an idea that's been around so long as I've been studying criminal justice, for 40 years. The idea that, and usually it was originally meant for like property crimes and dealing with juveniles, where maybe a juvenile damaged someone's property, took someone's car, maybe some sort of trespass or burglary. If you catch the juvenile and they express regret, and there is an idea, this is a theory, is that if you bring them together with the victim, and if the victim consents, the victim will talk across the table to that perpetrator who's a juvenile, and that juvenile will then see the harm that their actions have done, and they will be restored holistically to a better place psychically, and therefore there will be a healing. I'm not joking. This is how it goes. There will be healing between the victim and the perpetrator, and society will be better for it. And I don't think it was ever meant for violent crimes, robberies, deadly weapon kind of cases, serious assault cases. No, but that idea of restorative justice has been taken from an idea and blown up way out of proportion to far exceeded what it originally was meant for. It's not meant for all kinds of other crimes. It's meant for minor crimes committed by juveniles. That's it.
Yeah, it sounds like I knew what it was. It's basically to try to make the victim whole. I just wanted you to explain it. And but it is so ridiculous that I mean, it's almost hard to believe that someone invented that, but that has a brain. Folks, if you're looking for a great attorney in the New York metropolitan area, then Joe Murray is your man. Joe's a retired NYPD member of the service, police officer, and a fantastic defense attorney. And you can reach Joe on his cell phone at 718-514-3855. Email him at joe@jmurray-law.com, or go on his website, jmurray-law.com. Not only is Joe a fantastic defense attorney, but he's a huge supporter of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. There's a picture of him on the screen right there. In case you're wondering what he looks like, that's Joe, a former boxer and NYPD police officer. And as I said, a huge supporter of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. I wanted to get to also, when I say the hits keep happening to New York City police officers, the city council, I think, hates the police. I really believe they do, because they're pathetic people, and they just made another little law that the NYPD is going to have to adopt, and it's called the How Many Stops Act. And Mayor Adams vetoed it, and the city council overrode his veto. So when a New York City police officer stops someone, not even to for a criminal matter, stops them to give them directions, they want them to fill out a report For every single interaction they have with the public, they want the police officers talk about hampering them in doing their job. Let's throw more paper at them so they're not able to do what they're supposed to do, which is fight crime. And just, it's like you can't believe, like, how do these people get elected? Who elects these people? It's like unbelievable.
You get what you in democracy, you get what you vote for. And people in New York City, unfortunately, for whatever reason, have voted for this. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but you will pay for your choices. And New Yorkers are unfortunately paying for their choices. The idea that you're going to need to get a name, maybe a date of birth, an address, and then fill out someone's, gender and what supposed race. Do you think people want to talk to police? Do you think people are going to consider this harassment? And what would you do if the person refuses to give you their name? They don't have to give you their name. The police officer can't arrest someone for failing to give them their name or to cooperate with them when they're asking them, why are you here? It's ideology without common sense. And I think really what they're looking to do is actually just slow down to a crawl the ability of the police to actually respond proactively to crime, because you're just going to have cops filling out paperwork that no one's ever going to see except maybe the ACLU when they sue the city a couple of years from now and or ask for a FOIL request for all this information maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, to see who the police are talking to. And I think it'll be the basis of some sort of lawsuit in the future. It is pointless, and it just ties the police officers' hands once more, and it doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever.
Mike, I know that I've also, in some of our other shows, I've mentioned technology. And we just had an incident in Chicago. The mayor of Chicago just banned ShotSpotter. And if you guys don't know what ShotSpotter is, it's a great technology that is a system of microphones and cameras that, along with GPS, and it's obviously the technology that can pinpoint where a gunshot goes off. And thus, the police can get exactly to the exact location where the shots were fired. Chicago mayor decided, no, that's too accurate in identifying people. There's been others, another great technology, facial recognition. They've decided that that's racist. Some of these new technologies, people are dismissing. Well, we had years ago the Stop, Question, and Frisk database. Well, Stop, Question, and Frisk now is not
gone
as widely used as it once was. Certain databases, some of these people wanted, like that little, I'll put up the picture I put up before of the gang chart that was up on the screen. Some people in city councils object to this, that they're putting together a hierarchical, basically a hierarchy of gang members that they can work off and show when they do have to explain this case to other police officers, district attorneys, lawyers. This is what we got. They use this for the Gambino crime family. They use this for the Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang, which is what this is. And then there are those that say the police shouldn't be allowed to do that. For you guys that don't know how investigation works, and that's another reason a lot of these migrants are problematic, is because we have no record of them. Many of them, and not all of them, but many of them are criminals. And then we don't have their pictures. We don't have their criminal history because they snuck into this country, right? So when they do commit a crime, at least the first few crimes, we're not going to have their fingerprints. We're not going to have their picture on file. So in the incidents where this was a huge organized crime ring, where they were stealing mopeds, knocking old ladies to the ground, taking their credit cards, and then using their credit cards and sending some of the goods and the money back to their own country. very difficult for law enforcement to solve these because the people doing it have no history here. And do politicians care about this? Nah, I don't think they give a shit. I really don't.
You talked about the mafia. This sort of, activity takes a lot of street intelligence brought together through a number of different, units within the NYPD and maybe even with the help of the feds to actually diagram the hierarchy of a criminal gang. And it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. But once you got it, you can now be a more effective policing unit and going after who is actually, a low level person and who's on the upper echelon. And for this to be, poo-pooed or said, or to be considered something that's racially motivated, no, this is done for any sort of organized crime. It could be a white collar organized crime. It could be Sicilian mafia. It could be the Russian mafia. That sort of thing. The Irish mafia. It could be any of that sort of thing. It is an amazingly important.
Is there still an Irish mafia?
Maybe on the
I
west
haven't
side.
seen them around. I haven't seen them around in years.
Yeah, maybe like in the 1980s they were going out of style. But the shot spotter is huge. These things that are used, like say shot spotter and other technology like that, those are in poor areas where people are victimized constantly. And this helps the police get information without anyone actually having to be considered a snitch, calling 911. The police can get the information very quickly. And we also got to remember most crime is intra-racial. Race has nothing to do with it. People are hurting people and victimizing people in their own neighborhoods where they live. And mostly it's people of the same socioeconomic background, ethnic background, that sort of thing. It has nothing to do with racial animus. It has everything to do with trying to get to the bottom of a criminal act like a shooting as soon as humanly possible with the help of technology. It makes no sense to in Chicago to end the contract, and now the people of Chicago have one less safeguard out there. The poor people of Chicago, Black, white, and Hispanic, have one less layer of protection. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and something, Mike, some of the other technologies that we've spoken about in some of our other cases, for example, investigative genetic genealogy. That is going to be like the polio vaccine of the 21st century. It is so unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And the capabilities that they're solving murders from 30 years ago. They're identifying bodies from 30 years ago. And some attorney, some smart attorney, some anti-law enforcement attorney can go and file some legal briefs against that. That's illegal. They're violating this. They're violating that. And law enforcement, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying it could happen as you see some of these technologies that we were just speaking about, shot spotter, facial recognition.
Right.
Some people saying, oh, they're unfair. They're this, they're that. I could see investigative genetic genealogy being challenged the same way in court. And then, well, look, most states don't allow familial DNA. They don't allow that technology.
Billy, it's sad because these technologies have been proven to be accurate, and maybe it's the politics, and that's probably what it is, but it's not the technology that's failing. It's the people who don't want it. They're failing the public, and the public is paying the price because, as you know, and I know, and I'm sure everyone listening knows, the politicians always have armed escort, wherever they go. We know this of our people in Congress. We know this of our state legislators. We know of it of our mayors, and so they don't have the fear, and they don't have to live with the consequences of their actions the same way that the voters, the John Q. Public, Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public, have to do every day. And so therefore, they don't have the fear of crime that you and I would. And that's a sad thing, because they are living in a little fantasy land that allows them to do these ideologically based human experiments and endanger the public. It's really sad.
You know, Mike, I wonder if that 15-year-old juvenile that fired the gun outside of Macy's
In Times Square.
In Times Square, I wonder if he knew that that was a gun-free zone.
He should have. He should have. Everybody else knows it's a gun-free
Everyone
zone.
knew. He didn't know. He brought
Right.
his gun and fired at police officers in the gun-free zone.
Right. I thought that
Jeff
was a
M.
safe
from the
place.
chat. They also save lives. He's talking about shot spotter. A lot of times they take the police straight to a body on the ground.
That's right.
That might still be breathing. 100% right. Yeah.
That's right.
The technology. You know, I want to mention, as long as we're on the topic of juveniles, I'm not, every state seems to have redefined the ages of what a juvenile is.
Yeah.
In New York City, it used to be 16 and over.
Right.
You were treated as an adult. And I think in New York City now it's 18, isn't it?
I thought it was 18, and once you hit 19, then you'd be considered an adult. So I think it's like 18. You're right now. But
So 18, and then look, did you notice in Kansas City the 22 people shot at the Super Bowl party, one dead, two juveniles? They won't tell us. The politics behind that is sickening.
No,
They will not tell us how old those juveniles were. For days, they wouldn't. They know exactly what happened, but they won't tell. You know why? It's against their politics. The mayor of that city was salivating to talk about anti-guns, talk about the Second Amendment and restricting it. Then they found out it was two mutts, two juveniles, you know, and all of a sudden nothing came out. They didn't put it out there. They didn't put out anything about the shooters. We don't even know their names to this day. How old are they? What is
Right.
your definition of a juvenile?
Well, amazingly, as I was reading this, and we talked about it before going on, this is Alvin Bragg's it's his manifesto. If you take a look on the last page under Section 6, it talks about prosecuting cases of criminals under the age of 25. So it's almost as if Alvin Bragg has now decided to go 7 years beyond the state level of what a juvenile is and say, juveniles, we're going to consider people up to the age of 25 to be juveniles because
Because he says all of a sudden he's a psychiatrist.
Right.
Because their brain hasn't fully formed. Where the hell do you get off talking about that?
Right. They have a lack of impulse control. They suffer from peer pressure and the lack of insight to appreciate the consequences that come with age. I'm sorry. If you're old enough to vote, you're enough to go into the army to defend this country. You're old enough to, to do those sorts of things. You're old enough, and it's like this. You're old enough to get married and have children, but you're going to be considered to be too immature to appreciate the consequences of your actions. This is the kind of stuff that endangers the citizens of New York, and God forbid any other states or cities that have district attorneys like this. It is endangering the taxpayers' lives. It's a ridiculous social experiment where the only people that are going to get hurt are the taxpayers.
Oh, Mike, the other day when those cops were attacked and he was confronted by the press, he ran like a bitch to his car and wouldn't answer any questions.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And who pays the consequences? The person-
AM from the chat, this DA needs to be fired. I agree. He should have been fired by the governor that day. These cops, the day he put out this manifesto, he should have been fired, which was in 2022. So we could have got rid of him right then. But the other four DAs in the city are no better. They're just as bad. They're all cut from the same cloth. I think they're all getting the Soros money. This is like a national trend in sanctuary cities. They all have DAs like this. Chicago, the guy who just got rid of ShotSpotter, he's the same thing. And Chicago violence is out of control.
Yeah. Chicago has 1/3 the population, maybe not even less than that. And they have probably about, they might have 33% of our population, but they have 50% of our homicides. And so therefore they're way out of whack in terms of violent crime per 100,000 people statistically, and that's a shame because they've given up addressing it. They don't want to address it. They can't address it. They're afraid to address it. Although they know exactly what the problem is, they can't deal with they can't deal with it. They just can't bring themselves to do what they know they need to do. They can't do it.
This is one of the, this would be prosecuted as a petty larceny.
The Gucci store in the meatpacking district. It happened just after noontime on West 14th and 9th Avenue. Police say 2 men and a woman walked into the store and then ordered everyone to lie on the floor. Witnesses told police one suspect appeared to have a weapon, but they never actually saw it. The suspect stole luggage and several other items. They left the store and then jumped into a Honda SUV.
I live across the street and haven't heard of it locally at all, but no, it's really scary.
With it like a holiday and everybody being out and shopping and
Why is it so scary? You weren't there, you weren't there at all. You're scared. Fuzzy Doxy, thank you so much for the $9.99 super sticker. Good show tonight. Thanks. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. But I just wanted to show that because that's an example of an Alvin Bragg petty larceny right there. Right. 3 people go in. They never saw the gun. They weren't in any danger.
Right.
They get caught. Petty larceny,
No danger. No danger whatsoever.
And how about, even like a case like that where burglary is knowingly and unlawfully entering or remaining in a building with intent to commit a crime. So that could also be a burglary, but he'll never charge that because there's no other underlying felony. It's like, I can't believe what's happened to the rule of law in this city and this state.
Billy, you remember what the crime was like when you first got on and I first got on and all the work that had been done. And, by 9/11, by the late 1990s, the early 2000s, New York City was basking in the success, and the residents had the greatest, decline in crime that anybody could ever imagine, their wildest imaginations. And we were like probably the safest big city in the entire world. And then up until about 10 years ago, it was a wonderful city to be in. And then slowly it just started eroding very quickly, like say 2014, 2015, 2016. And it has gone to hell in a handcart as faster than you could ever imagine. And what used to be a wonderful city that had been saved from the 1970s and brought back to its glory is now gone back that way. We've regressed all the way back to the past, where we are now a city like you'd see in these old 1970s police movies, where it's a terrible thing. And who's paying for it? The people of the city of New York are paying for it because they have no choice but to have to live with this. Hopefully they'll change. There'll be a change in leadership, but it's really sad what the experiments that are going on with people's lives. It's terrible.
100%, Mike. And we covered a lot of things, and we didn't cover. It's going to be more and more difficult, I think, in New York City to get people to take the job as an NYPD police officer, because it's just, we all met really smart guys on the police department, and I used to say there were guys that figured this job out day one, and they'd stay on the street for year and a half, 2 years. All of a sudden, you hear the guy like you. He's in law school. And you're like, how the hell this guy's in law school? And then
you give me a lot more credit. It took me 9 years.
I knew you did more time on the street, but there are those that figure it out really quickly, and they go downtown. They work in the chief shoe shining unit or whatever at 1PP, and next thing you know, they get some cushy job. And they knocked out their law degree. And then as soon as they hit 20, they're like, see ya, NYPD, and you're like, wow, you figured this one out, didn't you? And they didn't get their hands dirty ever, right. And you're like, wow. And then they come back on the PD as a deputy commissioner. Right. That's the other thing. I haven't been on the police. I've been out over 12 years now. I see all these people getting appointed as deputy commissioners. Why do you need all these deputy commissioners? That's ridiculous, right? It's
Right.
just throwing someone a contract, a job,
Right.
you know, a civilian a job that he doesn't deserve. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of the people, unfortunately, have never worked in law enforcement, but they have an interest in criminal justice, but they may have agendas. I don't know, but it would be nice if the people who are the deputy commissioners actually had previously worked in some sort of law enforcement capacity. That would go a long way for the police to actually.
Well,
the
Mike,
rank
we
and
always
file
used to
police
love
actually have faith.
we always used to love the community affairs guys with those blue jackets. They didn't get they didn't get the top respect either, right?
No,
not the light blue jacket. Get out of here, And then we got Lieutenant Pete in the chat. He loved that I said the guys down at 1PP working in the chief shoe shining unit, because he knows it's true. Lieutenant Pete paid his dues for years and years. 3-2 precinct street crime unit.
3-2 is a hot
What a
house.
man, Lieutenant Pete. Look, we have to have some humor in the show too. But who's not to say that those guys that got off the street real fast and got a law degree figured it out better than all of us, right?
Yeah, I was a slow learner.
Frank Marsha says, Bill, you should have stuck around. You could have had one of those deputy commissioner jobs.
Yeah.
Hey, I see some people I know that one of the assistant deputy commissioner. I don't know. Maybe they make $5 less a week. I don't know, but they get a car. They make pretty damn good money, right? And most of them are retired. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
It's a good job.
So,
it's a good job.
well, I think that we got a lot off our chest. I don't know if we educated a lot of people tonight, but it's sort of disturbing because we love the NYPD and we love New York City to see what's happening to it. It's really, really disturbing, and with the people in government, I hate to be a negative, but it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. So I can only assume it's going to get worse because New York can become a Chicago.
Sure.
New York can become a San Francisco. I hope it doesn't. The most important city in the world is going to go the way of all of these other horrible, what's happened to some of these other woke cities. I hope not. Professor Mike, I'm going to give you the last words.
Just to say thank you very much to everyone who's tuned in tonight, and hope you've enjoyed the show. And just to have faith that sooner or later the pendulum will swing back the other way, and we'll be in a environment where law and order actually means something. There was a time when the city was in dire straits, and then it was fixed by every politician from Democrat, Republican, Independent, city level, state level, working together, getting on board with one message that we're not going to tolerate crime. Hopefully, and we've gone we're now in the other direction, but hopefully you'll swing back, have faith, keep your fingers crossed.
Maybe Hillary's the answer.
I don't know.
Maybe Hillary Clinton would want to run for mayor. I don't know.
You never
Anyway,
know.
folks, thank you so much for listening tonight. We got a little passionate, but we're glad that you guys came along for the ride. Have a great night, and God bless everyone.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.